Good morning, good afternoon, people. Saturday afternoon. I was just thinking about a lot of things, things that have happened this week. It's Saturday, and have been reflecting on a lot of the things that have happened this week. Choices made, decisions that have to be made, things that have to get done, and so I'm having some reflective time this morning, and I did something that was interesting. Uh, I went through. Let me show you this. Let me bring this up and let you see what I was doing. Bring my iPad up, and recently started reading a book called The Treasure Principle, and the subtitle on it says "Unlocking the Secrets of Joyful Giving." and and so and while I was thinking about that, just went through and counted the number of books in my Kindle app here, and as you can see, I got a few. I got a few, and books on most on Bible theology, doctrine, various ideas, um, books on prayer, books on here's a book, The 49th Mystic. I actually have that on my Audible as well. And I would interest Ted Decker is an interesting author. He wrote 80/30, 80/33. Recommend the listening of those two audibles. Could be a good read, but the narration of those two books are excellent. It gives you perspective and puts you in the mindset of the times that the Bible was actually written. Just gives you it's a fictional story, and so but it gives you a perspective of the culture and the times. And so when you read scripture, it it bears witness. For instance, going back to the treasure principle, the author helps you to understand, gives you this narrative about the fact that a traveler is going between the two towns, and he decides to cut across this field that belongs to this other person. He says, well, and sojourners or travelers or permitted this little shortcut, just shorten the travel. But he's because he's going across his fields, not on the road. He's having to use his staff, and his staff hits something hard, and he takes note that, whoa, this is not just a rock or ground. So he digs down and he finds this treasure, and he is so he opens up the treasure box, and it's gold, it's silver, it's precious stones in the treasure box, and he concludes or figures out. He says, evidently, a wealthy person buried this treasure in this field and either forgot about it or has died, and whatever the case may be. And so, treasure back in the ground, and he says, I know what I'll do. I'll go and buy the field, and then whoever owns the field owns the treasure. And then he concludes that if I go back and sell my camels, my donkeys, my sheep, and my house, if I sell everything, I can take the money and come buy the field. And just that narration of that particular story points out in the scriptures how Jesus uses a parable to talk about the buried treasure in the field, and how this man sells all that he has because and buys the field and buys the treasure. And then he goes into various interpretations of that. And but that's the kind of narration you'll get in 80/30, 80/33 by Ted Decker. So, but I was just going through all of the books, and decided to give a count. And I won't, And I realized I have at least 150 books. I got 150 books on Kindle alone, and I probably got that much in Audible. And some books that I would purchase in Audible, and said, okay, I'm gonna need this book I need the physical, electronic copy of that, so that I can do some research and use it as some type of just to be able to research and get the specific points, as opposed to trying to listen to the entire chapter or the book to get the principle. And so, and I bring that point up because I guess I got a question because I was listening to Myron Golden being, and I'll write his name down because this guy has a wealth of knowledge. And he was being interviewed by David, and I hope I spell his last name. It's either Chant or Chance, but I think it's Chance. So Myron Golden was being interviewed by David Chance, and and David asked Myron, "Where do you get all this knowledge from?" Well, Myron talks about he read a lot, and he says, he says, I read a lot, even though I read slow, I retain what I read, and that made me ask the question, who are you listening to? Because when you think about it, where are you getting your information about life perspectives? Because you can't train yourself. You can't, you can't, when I say you can't train yourself, the only challenge about reading is that no one holds you accountable for what you read. I mean, you have to have this internal integrity, this internal accountability that says, okay, if I read in a book that says you are to save 10%, that's in The Richest Man in Babylon, said you are to save 10%. 10% is yours to keep. I like that. It says 10% is yours to keep. And what the principle in that book is going on to say is that you save 10%, and then you invest that 10%, and then you invest the interest from that 10%. I'm trying to think of the illustration. What was the source of the illustration that showed if you graduated high school, went to work, begin to invest $2,000 a year for the next 10 years. So from 19 to maybe 12 years to 30, for 19 to 30, you invest $2,000 a year. Then stop investing. So from 19 years old to 30, you invest $2,000 a year in year. Come on. Okay. You invest $2,000 a year, and then you stop. And from 30 to 65, you would have somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, I think the number was 3 million. It was up there. Now, by contrast, if you start at 30 years old, and go to 65, you'd have like 1.4 million. The difference is you spent 2,000 times 35, whatever that is. Whatever that, I'm not going to figure that out in my head. But whatever, as opposed to back up here, you got 2,000 times 11. Okay? And so the concept from The Richest Man in Babylon is that if you were to, you would have a lot more money working for you if you start early enough and use time, to work, to do its work for you. But you have to start off by, setting aside 10% is yours to keep. And so, but the interesting thing about all of that, all of the books you read and all of the things, all of the people you're you're listening to, there's this thought that it hit. Knowledge is not power. And when the guy said that, I was like, I kind of tilt my head. You know, what do you mean knowledge is not power? He says, the application of knowledge is power. And because I can have 150 books in my library, my electronic library. I can have another 100 books on my Audible, and got all that knowledge about whether it's money, whether it's about the relationships, whether it's about God, but it doesn't benefit me if you don't apply that knowledge. Now, here's the thing that gives me hope. Knowing that you have that knowledge in you, or knowing that you have that resource at your fingertips, you can always go back and say, okay, you know, the old cliche is that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. The best time to apply knowledge is when you heard it, especially when you got it to a point that you can retain it into your head and you can regurgitate it and you can talk about it. But the next best time to use it, if you don't apply that knowledge, it just becomes information in your head. So it becomes not useful to you. Second best time to apply that knowledge is when you hear it again. And so I've kind of told myself, you don't need to buy any more books. You need to just go back and read the books that you have, and apply the knowledge that's in those books. And it provides a little bit of hope, you know, in trying situations, because you're like, I really don't need more direction. I don't, you know, we'll spend hours upon hours trying to find an answer to a problem, and the answer to the problem is at your fingertips. The answer to the problem is right before you. You just have to apply discipline to the information that you already heard, and you can get out of whatever situation you're in, whatever it may be. But just wanted to share that, you know. For some of you, you know, we're your serial information junkies. You know, you know, and you think it's the next bit of information that's going to change your life. But sometimes it's information that you already have. The one that you have that you were so moved by it that you begin to tell other people, hey, I read it in this book. And I'm known for that. I'm known for being in a conversation and associating something in the conversation to a book that I just read. Case in point, I told you I just purchased the Treasure Principle this week, and there were certain points in it that stood out to me, and some things are just informational, you know, and some things are for practical application that can change your life. So, for some of you, go into your library. Sit down and think about some truths that you've already heard, what you already know to be true, and some principles, some activities that someone has already laid out the blueprint, and say, hey, if you do the X, Y, Z, you're going to produce Z. X, Y, Z, you're going to produce this result. And get on to doing what you need to do and handle the situation you're facing. Have a good day, people. As I said, this is a Saturday reflection.